Okay, Shavua Tov to everybody. Good morning. We are going to begin. We're going to do a little intro of a small vart from this week's Kaju Halachas for Women course. So this week's Parsha is pretty much the stories are over, and it's all about command after command after command. We got a lot of them. One of the most packed Parshas of mitzvahs in the Torah. Not the most. We have the Kisave, Kiseitze, which takes the cake, Parshas Kiseitze, but nonetheless there are a lot of commands in this week's Parsha. And the common denominator of a lot of these mitzvahs are, as the namesake of the Parsha is, Mishpatim, dealing with civil law. We call it civil even though it's spiritual and godly and part of religion, but it's dealing with laws bein adam lechaver, between man and his fellow. And the beginning of the Parsha discusses Eilu mishpatim asher tasim lifneihem, which means, as Chazal expound, that you may only place the cases in front of a Jewish tribunal, a court of law, a Bezdin, and not a Gentile court. Idea of taking another Jew to a Gentile court, to a secular court system, is a very severe prohibition in the Torah, and it's brought in Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat chapter 26, that one who does so, writes the Mechaber, is considered to have raised his hand against the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, a terminology, a wording that is not used by any other mitzvahs that we see. And the reason for that is number one, us Jews, we like dealing with things that are within ourselves, insular. We don't like bringing it to the outside, but mainly because it shows a distrust of God when a person brings the judgment to a secular court. What this practically means is that if a person did something to you and you feel you have a monetary claim against them, then you have an obligation prior to discussing it with a lawyer and bringing it to a secular court to first take the person to a Bezdin. Now, even though, unfortunately, today, in the last 100-some-odd years, the Batei Dinim have been completely removed from their powers, it used to be, even post-exile, even post-Gullus, even post the destruction of the temple, rabbinical courts had autonomy from their local jurisdictions, their countries. And what they ruled was law for the Jewish people. There was a concept, a vad called Vad Arba Aratzes within the four different main lands in Europe, in which whatever their courts ruled was legally binding onto the Jews living in those areas. And so too in Arab countries and Eastern countries, whatever the Bezdin ruled had legal backing. Unfortunately today, the Batei Dinim have been stripped of these legal powers. However, that doesn't mean that we have the right to take someone to a secular court. As number one, you can always go to a Jewish court, find out the Jewish perspective, the perspective according to Torah, and if the person refuses to show up or refuses to abide by the verdict of the rabbinical court, you can then get an allowance to go to a secular court. It's not that we are never allowed to go to a secular court. You're not allowed to go there without a heter, without an allowance of the Bezdin. But if the Bezdin sees that this other litigant is being a rebel, he's disobeying, then 100% it is mutter to take them to a secular court. We know the Mishpat, the judgment of Hey Tevis, it was wanted to go through a Jewish court of law, but the other side refused to show up, and therefore it had to be arbitrated in a secular court. After the Rebbe made sure that they would first get a psak from the Rabbanim to go to a Bezdin and get a psak from the Bezdin, that since the other side is not showing up, that they can take it to a secular court. Sometimes you can circumvent the Bezdin, you don't even have to go. For example, if you know this individual will not show up to the Jewish court, he's a guy. What Schwarzer in Crown Heights is going to show up if you have a claim against him to the Beis Din of Crown Heights. Even if he doesn't know the politics, why would he show up to a Jewish court of law? So for a guy, you can even initially in that situation take him. But if, let's say, you live in Yerushalayim, a lot of the Arabs that live right off of Mea Shearim, not only do they not mind going to the Beis Din of the Badatz on Zupnik, but they actually sometimes go on their own, one Arab versus another, because they know that the Jews hold true justice. They don't go to their imams. So in a case like that, very often they have cases where an Arab against a Jew, or a Jew against an Arab, and the Beis Din of the Badatz, Aveda Charedas, paskins the halacha. So in such a case, if a person had for example, a guy doing some work in his home, and he felt he was overcharged, or the guy feels he was undercharged, and you want to take him to court, he wants to take you to court, first it has to go through the Beis Din. You don't have a heter to go to a secular court. Even here in Israel, since they don't rule according to Torah, the court system is viewed as a secular court system. And therefore it has that prohibition involved of mishpatehem. You have to put the judgment in front of the Jewish court, not in front of the secular court. This idea of this week's parsha, of all the different mitzvahs that are discussed in the Adam L'Chaveiroi, placed an emphasis that Judaism is not just about things we do between us and God, but there's many mitzvahs involving what we do between man and a fellow. According to Jewish monetary laws, exemptions due to scriptural or oral traditions, such as, for example, if somebody threw a whole bunch of nails, a real moron, threw a whole bunch of nails in the middle of the road, and you happen to be the first car to meet those nails, and as soon as you pass those nails, you now have 4 flat tires. Think of the time. You have to pre-think your actions before you enter a state of clumsiness or klutziness. And so therefore there is no, that would not be a legal excuse according to Jewish law, just say, oh, it was an accident. At the same time, that's a concept of Adamu and Olam. At the same time, every case is judged differently, but as I said before, in most cases we don't want to push the button and say, I will follow only biblical law. In the case example I gave, someone, let's say built their sukkah in a public area, did something very irresponsible and left nails sticking out and caused people to rip their shirts. So an Erlich Yid would be apologetic and pay them for the shirt they ripped. A person who is trying to do what caused the Churban Beis HaMikdash would say, I follow the letter of the law, and Bar Bereshus HaRabban is exempt. And he wouldn't pay you. And he won't even apologize. You say, listen, speak to God. This is his law. I don't pay anything.
Well, in this case, believe it or not, the person didn't even know they did it. They got up. It happened to me, whatever I'll say. It doesn't matter. I wasn't here. And they pushed the table and it spilled all over me, and my leg was and they walked away and they came back like nothing happened, and I'm like, ah. And I didn't say anything because I felt like if I was going to say something I would be upset, which is probably not their fault, really. They didn't mean wrong. But just the fact that they didn't even say sorry, but like I said, they didn't even notice. And I was like...
Okay, so in general, we can't control what other people do. So Chaysh and Mishpat, it's very easy to apply Chaysh and Mishpat to what other people should do to us. That's the easy way out. Usually people are very kind and charitable when it comes to other people's money. But here we're talking about for ourselves, what we have to work on, what we have to focus on. And what other people do is like everything religion, that's them. I control only myself, I don't control others. So this is something for us to embed and learn from. And this is the parasha, Parashas Mishpatim, is where we rejuvenate the necessity and the motivation to be careful in the monetary halachas. And as I said before, not to only lean on what is the letter of the law, but also to do what is morally correct and make amends with the person.
Should I have told the person just to know?
I don't know. It depends on the situation.
Then they should have known just so they would have been more careful next time, right?
Okay, we are continuing from what we left off. 2 weeks ago's class, we're Mirz Hashem going to complete the morning blessings today and begin going through, or maybe complete Birchas HaTorah. And that would be the end of this subject. And then we're going to move on to the next set of mitzvahs. We're going to do tefillin, first tzitzis, why women don't wear tzitzis. if they can, if they decide to. If a woman's very cold, she can put on a talus to warm herself up. We're going to, that happens. Well, doesn't happen ever. Tefillin we're going to discuss. We'll go, and that's a short subject. There's not much to discuss there. And we're going to go Mitzvah straight to davening laws applicable to women. So let's begin. So we've been through a lot of the details of morning blessings. We are continuing from where we concluded, and that is as follows. We're up to page 202. The same number of sparks that we elevated in Mitzrayim. 202. Okay. This is the book that we are going through. Okay, this is our text. Must one receive the pleasure that the blessing corresponds in order to recite it? We have mentioned bits and pieces about this. We're now going to do it in full. And again, the question is, this is a question we've discussed a few times. Do you have to receive the pleasure of the morning blessings? So for example, do you have to hear the rooster? So we have three opinions in the Rishonim. The Rambam was of the opinion, as well as the Beis Yosef, the Mechaber in his Shulchan Aruch in chapter 46, that the blessings are like all other blessings over food. You eat the food, you say the bracha. You don't say a bracha of shakol niyah b'dvarim, berim and mezainis, and amayis lechem and aretz when you're not consuming the foods. You can't look at the picture and think about eating it and say the bracha. Even if you have a great imagination and you can actually feel the taste in your mouth, can't say the bracha. You have to physically receive the pleasure. The Mechaber says, the Mechaber rules, as rules the Rambam, the morning blessings are no different. So if you don't hear the rooster, you cannot say the blessing over the rooster. Right? And so on and so forth. The reason why we'll bring this up again is because we're going to go through a detailed list of everything that we should try to receive benefit from in order so the blessings we say in the morning go according to all. The second and third opinions, which is the second opinions of the Rush, the third opinions of the Ramban, Nachmanides, they are a little more lenient, and they say certain blessings, or all the blessings, may be said even if you don't get the pleasure, because as we've said many times, we're saying it on the pleasure of the general populace, not necessarily of you. In other words, we should be happy and grateful to God that other people have these benefits, even if we personally did not get them. Number one is by them getting the benefit, they help us. Even if we're not getting dressed, other people getting dressed allow us to go outside. It allows us to be part of society, allows them to be part of society. So there's benefits received even when we didn't receive the benefit, but they did receive the benefit. I didn't hear the rooster, but my employee did, and he woke up for work. So I received the benefit, right? Or even if it's not your employee, the people working in the store are now in the store serving you because they woke up due to the rooster. So because of this, the Ramban, and a little less to an extent the Rush, are of the opinion that it has nothing to do with your personal benefit, but a global benefit that's received on that day, and therefore everyone says the bracha. And as I mentioned in the past, the Ramah, the Alter Rebbe, and the Shulchan Aruch, we all rule like this opinion, that you do not need to receive the actual benefit of the item. It suffices, min adin, for the fact that you woke up, it's the morning, and other people do receive it. Nonetheless, there are some segments of Jewry that follow the stringent approach of the Rambam, Maimonides, and the Mechaber. Who are they? So we've mentioned in the past, this is a case example where the Sfardim swerved from the ruling of their master and teacher, the Beis Yosef. They do not rule like him. They do go ahead and do like the Ramah and say blessings. And the reason for this is as follows. Even though in general we say Safek, Brachis, Lahakel, whenever there's a doubt in a blessing, you do not say it, you avoid saying it. When in doubt, do without. That's only if the worldly custom of Jewry has not arbitrated. But if the custom of Jewry is to go ahead and do so, we do not apply that rule. We mentioned this in length 2 weeks ago, discussing the blessing of Hanesim Le'Yav Koyach and why it is allowed to be said even though it lacks Talmudic basis. And the same thing applies here, and that's why here the Sfardim swerve from the ruling of the Mechaber, as the worldly custom is to go ahead and say it. So rules the Ben Ish Chai, the Kaf HaChaim, and other Sephardi poskim. However, there does remain one segment of Jewry that they still stick to their guns and say, we follow Maimonides, we follow the Mechaber. Who are they? The Chazon Ishnikim. Chazon Ish, he held of the Gra. The Gra was of the opinion of ruling like the Mechaber and the Rambam. And therefore, they, when they wake up in the morning in Bnei Brak, or wherever else in the world they live, and they don't hear a rooster, they will not say, Anais Nasach Vivina. If they didn't get dressed that morning, they slept in their clothing, they will not say Malbish Arumim. If they didn't put on a belt, they will not say Oizi Yisrael B'Gvura. If they don't have a hat, they will not say the Brach of Eit Yisrael B'Sefara. And so on and so forth. They hold like the opinion that requires it to be done. The Vilna Gaon did not manage to write a Shulchan Aruch. Maybe we'll mention in a few moments why. But he did write a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch known as Bir Hagra. It is a very complex encyclopedic type of commentary. It is printed today in all modern versions of the Shulchan Aruch in very small letters on the bottom. Let's not forget, in the time of the Vilna Gaon, he was considered the greatest halachic authority of his days. Amongst the Litvish world, the Chassidim, of course, followed the Alter Rebbe and others, and while the Sfardim weren't necessarily influenced by the rulings of the Gra, but the Gra, amongst European Jewry, was the chief Paisik. Nonetheless, interestingly, his halachic works are written in a very cryptic method, a very cryptic way, which doesn't allow the normal individual to really understand what he's trying to say. It's full of sources. So, for example, instead of writing, we argue and the halacha is like this, he will write, see, Taisvis, this and this page on the bottom, versus the opinion of the Ran, taking into account the opinion of the Rashba, and that's the halacha. I'll go figure out what that means. So you have to be a big genius to understand and decipher what he's trying to say. So because of this, Bir Hagra, even though it contains a lot of halachic novelties, practically his rulings aren't always followed even by Litvish Jewry who accepted the Gra's rulings upon themselves. Furthermore, the Gra's children testified in the introduction of his commentary, Bir Hagra, that he had always desired and wanted to print an actual clear Shulchan Aruch without this very cryptic form of commentary, so people know actually what to do. And he would never bring, he says, the children say, he testified to his sons, he would never bring two opinions. It would be the clearest Judaism as possible, like chicken soup without fat on Friday night. Right? The clearest thing possible. You don't have two. That was a joke. You don't have two opinions, right? You don't have any unclarity. That's what he wanted to do. Make it super clear. So his children write in the introduction. They asked their father, the Vilna Gaon of Eliyahu of Vilna, "Why didn't you do it? Time is running out. You don't have many days to live." And he answered them that in heaven they did not give him permission. That was his response. He did not receive permission. On the other hand, the Alter Rebbe's sons, in the introduction to the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, write that the heavens not only gave permission, but asked through the Maggid of Mezrich that he be chosen to write a new and clear Shulchan Aruch. So we see here where the Chassidim and Misnagdim are in agreement finally about something. We all agree the Gra did not receive the permission to write the final code of Jewish law, and the Chassidim have the tradition that the Alter Rebbe did. Another thing happened that also caused a swerving from the rulings of the Gra, due to the lack of available literature of understanding his opinion. There was another very famous sefer that came out at the same time known as the Chaye Adam. Chaye Adam was written also by a Vilna resident, and he wrote a very clear halachic work. Anyone ever see it or heard of it? Chaye Adam or Chachmas Adam? This was the most prolific halachic work of the 1800s, prior to the Aruch HaShulchan. Till today, you have people who swear by it still. That's what they go. That's what they do, like the Chaye Adam. And he actually has an interesting story because he was a regular worker. He did not sit in a base medrash all day like the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon had a room he studied in his whole life. The Chaye Adam, I believe he was a a shoe repairer, right? A cobbler. He repaired shoes for a living, and he would go from city to city. And because of that, when he first came out with his work, after he waited for the Vilna Gaon to pass away, he didn't want there to be any friction. When he first published his work, in I believe the early 1800s, the Vilna Gaon passed away in 1798. So many of the members of the Vilna community came out again. How can a cobbler print a halachic work? How can someone who works for a living suddenly become an expertise in Jewish law? But nonetheless, their antagonistic and approach and opposition to his work did not last very long, and it became one of the most prolific works in Europe at that time. And his rulings were often not in par with the rulings of the Vilna Gaon. So these are two reasons of, even though the Gra was viewed as the main posek of Litva's jury at the time, for whatever reason, the rulings of the Gra and Halacha did not really maintain any permanency together with Litva's jury. This is exception to the Chazanishnikim. Chazanishnikim quite often follow the Gra in everything. They go like the Gra, and therefore those who do like those opinions, as I said, they do not recite the brachas unless they receive the pleasure. So let's go through the list. Oh, before we go through the list, I'll mention that even though the conclusion is that we do go ahead and say the brachas, nonetheless, initially one is to try to receive as much benefits as possible. So it's not, we don't say ignore the Rambam, ignore the Gra, ignore these opinions, but if you couldn't do it, you couldn't get yourself a rooster that morning, your rooster is on vacation, so still say Anais Nasech Vivina. But if you have the ability to get the pleasure, you have to initially, lechatchila, try to do so. So let's go through the list. We have here 15 things of what to do in the morning. It's a long list to start off on. Oh, just woke up, already have 15 things on the to-do list. Before brachas, of course. To get these benefits after brachas is a little, the point is you get the benefit and then you say the bracha afterwards. So number one is to sleep. That's an easy one. First one off the bucket list is to sleep for 30 minutes at night, emphasis being at night, because you don't say the brachas of halakai neshama for waking up during day sleep. It needs to be, at least according to Jewish law, a real sleep which brings upon it the rejuvenation necessary to then be chayiv in blessings and receive the bas melech tumah we discussed in previous classes, is shishim neshimas, 60 breaths. Now how much is 60 breaths? It's not 60 breaths of a human, but 60 breaths of a horse. Have you ever timed how many breaths a horse takes how long it takes 60 breaths of a horse to be accomplished? So there's a machlekes. Some say 2 minutes. I guess they had a very fast horse. Others say, some say 2 minutes. Some say, but the consensus of poskim is 30 minutes, a half hour. That's why and when it says David HaMelech in his entire life never slept shishim neshimas. I don't know if it's entire life, but at least from the time he was king. He was anointed, he did not sleep shishim neshimas. Which means that he never slept straight for 30 minutes. He never wanted to have the impurity of sleep on his hands, to have the taste of death.
You could never say the blessings, which is a bracha.
Right, maybe he held like the Ramban though. David wasn't Sephardi, right? He was Ashkenazi, right? It's a joke.
But haven't they proven that you must have much more sleep than that?
Oh,
it's not healthy.
Correct. David HaMelech did not go to sleep for 29 minutes, 29 seconds, and then start his day. Most likely the intent is, as is written in the Gemara, he would doze off for 29 minutes and 59 seconds, and automatically he trained his body, or spiritually this was done, he would wake up and go back to sleep. So there was never a straight sleep. So this also proves what a lot of people claim, that if they have disturbed sleep, I'll give an example. If somebody slept for 6 hours straight, from top to bottom, no one bothered them, versus someone who slept for 8 hours straight, but he was disturbed 3 times in the middle of the night, who is more rejuvenated, who feels more energized? So some argue it's a 6 hours. I don't know, yeah?
I think so.
I think all the ones who are disturbed by sleep say that. If you get disturbed one time, you need to make up now another 4 hours of sleep. So how much sleep do you need for being disturbed at night? How much more sleep do you need? But nonetheless, I guess from here you can see it's true. If sleeping in 29-minute intervals for the whole night is not considered sleep to the point that you have the rejuvenation to say Lekai Neshama and Asher Yatza for thanking Hashem for that. So there is Torah proof for that position. Yeah.
So if a person sleeps at least, like say, a half an hour before Chatzot, and then let's say his sleep continues only to like 10 minutes after Chatzot.
Anytime at night, the half hour is good. So even if you're an early birder, you go to sleep as soon as the lights are out, your lights are out. Okay? As soon as the night's in, lights out, and you sleep for your half hour then, you're already chayiv for the next morning. That's not a problem. It's any night's sleep during the nighttime. Next, number 2 on the bucket list is to hear a rooster crow. This is a tough one. You do what you can, but don't purchase a rooster for this purpose if it will disturb your neighbors. That's what we discussed earlier. Chumras of the Rambam and the Chazon Ish don't override Choshen Mishpat laws of common courtesy and decency in a public area. So if you're living by yourself on a farm, nobody hears you for miles, get yourself 20 roosters, be mahader in the mitzvah, no problem. But when you're living amongst other people, and it's going to disturb other people's sleep, then obviously this goes back to what we spoke earlier, there's a sensitivity that should be in place that a person should not get this chumrah in that situation. Right? Do we agree on that? You don't want your neighbor's rooster bothering you? Okay.
Yeah, what if you do have neighbors that do have roosters, and everybody thinks that roosters like crow at 6 a.m. They do not, like an alarm clock.
Right.
They crow at 3 a.m.
Right.
and
Because
4
that's
a.m.
because 3 a.m. is about Elisa Shachar, and that's when Gavriel is waking them up in heaven. So what you can do, the angel Gavriel, right? That's why it's called Gever, the rooster. So you can invite them over for a meal and ask them if they would like to serve rooster meat. Maybe they'll get the point. Chickens have feelings too, but so do humans who are their neighbors. They need sleep. So it depends. If you can get a silencer on the beak, maybe they make them. And it's
Target practice.
okay. Number 3 on our list is to put on a shirt. That's quite simple. Just means to get dressed. So that means if a person has the desire to just stay in their sleeping nightgown during the morning and say brachas in it, in order to fulfill the lechatchila position of getting the benefit, they should put some garment on. Even if it's a jacket, doesn't matter. Shirt, that's the example given. Slippers is not this type of clothing. Slippers are under shoes. So that wouldn't be good enough for Malbish Harumim. The next one is Pekeach Ivrim, number 4, which is to basically place the hands over the eyes and do like this. Something that some people do in the morning and some people do when they're falling asleep in a chair. Right? And try to wake themselves up. So that's Pekeach Ivrim, to open the eyes of the blind. That's something to get used to doing if you don't already do it before saying blessings in the morning. Number 5 is, this is a given, this is not very hard to do, to sit up on the bed. That's matir asurim. Not to say brachas from the bed. No lazy days with brachas.
It says in my siddur, Chabad siddur, it says to stand when you say brachas.
Oh, okay, so we'll discuss that later.
Okay.
It does say that? I'm surprised.
Yeah, right?
Right. They don't have a source for that, though. They do not have a source. It's on the book. They don't have a source. Guarantee. We'll discuss that later on. But regarding standing. But nonetheless, this is referring to the pleasure needed to recite the blessing of Matir Asurim. The pleasure needed to recite the bracha of Matir Asurim. The pleasure you need to do that is to sit on the bed. That's the benefit, that you can move around your limbs. Okay? The next one is to stand for Zeikev Kafufim. Back in the day, before the Chabad Siddur was printed with the instructions saying to stand, people would wake up in the morning and say these brachas as they happen. They woke up from sleep, like kind of shama. They heard the rooster, they put on their shirt, malbash harumim. They went like this to their eyes, they said, Pekeach Ivrim, then they sat on their bed, said Mater Surim, and then they stood up and said Zeikif Kafufim. That's how it was done once upon a time. This is a long time ago, it's Talmudic time. Today we get all these benefits first, and then we say the brachas, that we know, right?
What is it, making upright? Is that how does that?
Zeikif Kafufim is, standing upright.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's one thing that you can sit, you have a limited movement of the body, you've gotten out of the ropes of sleep, and then you can stand. There are some people who are able to experience what's called a conscious dream, where they know they're dreaming, they know they're sleeping, but they can't wake up. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So this is it's literally you feel like you're stuck. Your body is immobile. No, your body's immobile, and you are stuck in this dream, and you know you're sleeping. You know this is a dream. So when we wake up, we thank Hashem, Matir Asurim, then now we're able to once again move. The installation of the soul into the body has been complete, 100%. Placing one's feet on the ground is Refareika Ha'aretz Alamayim. So all these we pretty much do. We're just mentioning what the pleasures are, but this is Baruch Hashem. We don't have to worry about this. This gets done regardless. The next one, however, is something that you do need to do something about, and that is to put on leather shoes for Sha'asali Kol Tzarki. So it is best if you own a pair of leather shoes. First of all, it's best to own a pair of leather shoes. And if you do, it is best to wear them at the time of saying brachas in the morning rather than to say the brachas in slippers. Unless you get leather slippers. Yeah. You get leather sandals, leather slippers. Mechem Etzadei Gavur is an easy one. That's to walk. Oizi Yisrael B'Gvura is to put on a belt. We discussed 2 weeks ago regarding how this is corresponding to women, what the woman have to wear a belt. I did not find any information on this matter, but if a woman does have a belt, then she should try to put on the belt if that's part of the garment before saying the brachas. A hat, a married woman covers her hair, so she's taken care of for Oiti Sol B'Sefara. A single girl, it's not really common for her to wear a head covering, and therefore she would have to follow in this the opinion of the Ramban, which just allows them all to be said out of the custom of the world. 12 is washing hands for Al Netilas Yadayim. 13 is washing the face, Hamaver Shena. The idea of washing the face is brought in a few different halachas. One of them is a general way of preparation for davening, to wash the face before davening, but it's also done for the bracha of Hamavir Shena. So before we say Hamavir Shena, before we say brachas, we should wash our face. Obviously going to the bathroom is Asher Yotzar. And what do you have to do to say Shalei Asani Gayin Ovid and Isha? Or Shasani Kirtzayin? Do you have to do anything?
Put on makeup.
So there obviously this is just, waking up already accomplishes the Shalei Asani Gayin Ovid or Shasani Kirtzayin for those who say it. And there is no extra special benefit for that has to be done. Okay, so that completes our list of things that we should try to accomplish before morning blessings. The main emphasis would be, again, with the with leather shoes. And no, the shoes was for Sha'asali Kol Tzarki. So we should try to wear leather shoes beforehand. And we mentioned the belt, the hat, different things that we won't necessarily always be doing. We already discussed what to do if you didn't sleep at night. We're not going to go over that again. You can look at the previous classes that were recorded. We're going to continue straight to another case scenario, which is a person who wakes up prior to Alais. Prior to daybreak, what should he do? So I actually got this question last week from someone. No, it was Yud Shvat. On Yud Shvat, there was an individual who traveled to the Tzion of the Rebbe, and he arrived before Aleis HaShachar, and he had slept on the plane. And he asked, what do I do about the morning blessings? Can I say them before Aleis HaShachar or not? So, let's say you woke up, you're starting your day at 2 o'clock in the morning. Can you say the morning blessings, or do you have to wait? We will give an answer, and it may not be yes. This can also happen if you have a flight. You have to catch a flight. You wake up in the middle of the night. Or whatever other case you wake up in the middle of the night, some people work. They work a very early morning shift. They have to start traveling already before Leis HaShachar. Here in Israel, we view it as, wow, you wake up so early. But in many places of the world, where their sunrise is late, their Leis HaShachar is also late. And even if they wake up at 6 o'clock, it's before Leis HaShachar. Especially regarding these matters of blessings, we follow the Aleis HaShachar of the later opinion, not the earlier opinion. So there's no Alter Rebbe here. It's 72 minutes before sunrise. It is Manius minutes. So it's not necessarily that late in certain areas of the world. And the question is, can you already say the morning blessing? So, based on what we already explained regarding someone who did not sleep at night, what we explained was that even though the custom is to say the blessings in the morning, if you didn't sleep at night, besides Fashiyot, unless you use the bathroom, because we bottom line rule like the opinion of Nachmanides, which says you don't have to physically receive the personal pleasure, but you're saying the blessings and the pleasure of the world. So if you didn't sleep, someone else did sleep, and therefore you say the blessings regardless. But that only begins from the time that people generally receive the pleasures, which is from Aleis. When people back in the day used to wake up. Today, how many people wake up at Aleis? Most people don't. But back in the day, a lot of people would start the day at Aleis HaShachar. As soon as it's able to become light, they want to take advantage of the light and get work done. So because of that, the halacha is that those who do not receive the pleasure of that blessing, even though we say we don't follow the Rambam, and you could say the bracha, but there's a time slot that you have to wait until to be able to do that, and that is morning. When is morning? As we said, Aleis HaShachar, daybreak. So, in a case where you didn't sleep at night, you for sure have to wait till daybreak to say the blessings. What about if you did sleep at night? So, according to the Alter Rebbe in the Siddur, he rules there's no difference. All those things that you already benefited from before morning, you can say the bracha. So, for example, I got dressed at 2 o'clock in the morning, I can say Malbish Arumin. I stood up, I can say Matir Asurim. All right, and I can say Zekif Kafufim, and I can say Reka'ot Salamayim. All the benefits that we listed earlier that you received before Aleis, you may likewise say before Aleis. But any benefit that you did not receive before Aleis, such as most people don't hear the rooster, you would have to wait until morning. And that's what I direct people to do, is to keep things super simple and not start going through a 20-minute discussion of him. Well, did you get this benefit? Did you not get this benefit? Wait to say brachas until Aleis HaShachar. Otherwise, right, they can get confused. This one they won't say, this one they will say, and then they're used to saying it and they just say all of them right away. So the best thing is just to wait till Aleis. Now I see that there's some friction, some opposition to this statement, and you're in good hands, because I had to argue with a few Rabbanim on this matter, trying to prove to them from the Alter Rebbe the position is as I stated. But anyone who opens up the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe, this is what he clearly writes, black and white. When you wake up, let's read the words. One who slept at night and became obligated in the morning blessings may recite all the morning blessings as soon as he becomes obligated in them, even before daybreak. Now, why did he say those words? Nischayev ben became obligated. Just say, one who slept at night 30 breaths and woke up says all the blessings, even if it's for Aleis. Why does he have to say and became obligated in them and then repeat again? You only say the brachas, you became obligated. Obviously, he requires you to receive the benefit. Why? Very simple. What right does a person have to say Anais Lasech Vivina on the pleasure of the world before the world receives the pleasure? What difference does it make if you slept at night or didn't sleep at night regarding that blessing? And the good news is that most Rabbanim did concur with what I did say, that is the halacha and the sesafik brachas, and therefore what I tell people to do is to wait until Aleis, and only after Aleis say the blessings.
You can't eat, really.
Eating is a different matter. Why can't you eat? Because you're saying you can't eat
But
before
you can't say
brachas?
brachas before.
We
Can't eat
did
before
we
brachas.
did touch upon this in the previous classes, and we said, remember what we said? Does anyone remember what we said? We said that there is no prohibition to eat before morning blessings. The prohibition is to eat before shachris. Just like you can't eat before shachris, you can't eat before morning blessings, because usually morning blessings is before shachris. So if you already daven shachris and now you want to say morning blessings, then you may eat beforehand. But if you didn't daven shachris and you want to say morning blessings, you can't eat beforehand, not because of morning blessings, because of shachris. Nonetheless, just like many eat before shachris so they have strength to daven, so too, if you're super hungry and can't focus and pay attention by the morning blessings, you may eat something for that purpose. Likewise, if you're very thirsty, there is no requirement to fast until you say your morning blessings. Some are accustomed to do so as a good custom so they don't get carried away. You have a cup of water turns into a cup of tea. A cup of tea comes into a piece of cake. Piece of cake turns into taking care of laundry, and before you know it, it's already 2 hours later. So because of that, some people, they make a rule for themselves. I won't eat or drink anything until I say my morning brachas. It's a good thing, not a requirement of the Shulchan Aruch. That is a self-imposed matter of piety. Okay? So if you're really thirsty and you're going to really control yourself and not get carried away, yes, you may have that cup of coffee to drink before your morning brachas. There's no problem, there's no halachic issue involved in doing so. What there is a halachic issue involved is eating and drinking before Aleis HaShachar. According to the Zohar, it's very dangerous to eat and drink before morning, before daybreak. The good news is, most times we're sleeping during that time. So it doesn't apply. But in times that we are awake, it does apply. Even though this is the ruling according to the Zohar, and a number of poskim do record it, practically when you're eating l'shem shamayim for purposes of having strength to serve God, it's recorded in other poskim, and so is also the Rebbe's conclusion, that we could go ahead and eat and you don't have to worry about the Zohar. What it means is don't go snacking on munchies at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning before Aleis for the sake of indulging in a sugary snack that tastes good.
But if you're going into a fast here.
Right, so that's where it's also discussed, and that's why some poskim discourage the custom of having merry meals before Aleis HaShachar. But as I said before, practically many are lenient, and here we're doing so we have strength during the day, so while you could be lenient and many are, you do have Jews that are stringent and they will not eat anything at that time before Aleis.
What if you have an eating disorder that as a night eater?
Right, so this is only, right, there's no problem with eating at night. Many people eat dinner at night. Here it's the period of right before Aleis HaShachar. This is like an hour to 2 hours called the last Ashmura. The night is split into 3 quarters. Not quarters, right? Thirds, but whatever. But it's split into 3 called quarters, mishmares, and the third one is where the Zohar says is dangerous because basically nighttime people naturally get scared, right? You don't get so scared by a lightning thunderstorm during the day than you do at night. It's a lot scarier at night. Night is a time where naturally there's a lot of klipas running around. There's a lot of, most crime happens at night. In fact, they did, I think we mentioned this in one of our classes on Wednesday night, that they did a study that in cities with the highest crime rates, when they have a new film that comes out and is shown at night, the crime rate suddenly drops for that evening. Like tremendously, because all the criminals are watching the movie. Right? But that's when generally the crimes occur. It's during the nighttime. The same way there's spiritual klipas, they infect the physical people to be involved in sinful or evil activity. So because of that.
So you shouldn't eat how close to like morning, is that it?
Yeah, it's like an hour before morning that those who are particular in this are careful not to eat.
Now, are we talking sunrise or?
It's basically from when they wake up after midnight. If when you wake up after midnight until Aleis HaShachar, which depending on the time of year, it could be 1 hour, 2 hours.
Some people have to wake up before a fast to eat, isn't it?
That's what she mentioned, yeah.
Right. And then so you wouldn't say brachas then. You'd wait till you actually got up.
Correct. Unless you want to just say what you got benefit for. But the best thing is, in order so you don't play the game of what did I get, what did I not get, are my shoes made of leather? I spent half hour on the internet, find out if my shoes are made of leather or not, so I can say, keep it simple, just go ahead and wait till Elisa Shach. As I said, both from the logic of the ruling as well as from the wording of the Alter Rebbe in a Siddur, it is required to receive the benefit.
Like you said you do wash them, I mean.
Oh, you can wash and say Netilas Yadayim. Yeah, you can for sure Netilas Yadayim and Alakai Neshama and Asher Yotza. Asher Yotza and Alakai Neshama, that's clear. But it's the rest of them, Sar Nisan Sach Vivino, that's where the problems begin. This wording, by the way, is also written in the Sefer Manhagim. They write it the same way, and excluding the English edition. The English edition of Sefer Manhagim, the Rebbe edited Sefer Manhagim. It's a very cherished and holy book for Chabad Chassidim. However, the English version is an English version. It's a translation in which the editors took to the liberty of adding and subtracting sometimes as they see fit. And therefore, often we see in the English version of Sefer Manhagim, something that's written in the original was missing, or something not written in the original was added. And this is an example over here. When they write this halacha, if you wake up in the middle of the night, you can say the morning blessings. They omitted those very important and vital words, became obligated that are written in the original. I'll give another case example where this happened with. The Sefer Menhagim in English records a number of Menhagim Yom Huledes, customs of birthdays, what to do on a birthday. Familiar with it? The birthday customs. So it has a section on it there, translating from the original. But they placed a comma in the wrong spot in one of the sentences when it discusses for men. You don't know about this because women don't get the aliyahs, but it says that when a man gets an aliyah, he should get the aliyah the Shabbos before. Now they miswrote the following: either the Shabbos before, or primarily on the day of the birthday if the birthday falls on that day. So in other words, from the original, the emphasis is when your birthday falls on the day of Kriyas HaTorah, that's the main time of getting the aliyah, and the Shabbos before is only if your birthday doesn't. The way they wrote it was, it didn't have that, the context didn't have that meaning. So one year on my birthday, when I was, it was a day of Kriyas HaTorah and I wasn't able to get an aliyah for whatever reason, and I was looking up, how important is it to try to get an aliyah on this day? And I, of course, opened up the original, the English one, the English edition, and the Shabbos before is the main thing, so not a problem, I did it already. But I had in the back of my head that this isn't correct. I'd seen something else elsewhere. Anyway, so as many Chassidim are accustomed, we write a pan to the Rebbe, a pidyon nefesh on the day of the birthday, write a letter to the Rebbe, which I did. And when I did this, I opened up in the Igros Kodesh, the Rebbe's letters, and a letter came out over there, an unbelievable letter saying, I wish you a happy birthday on the day of your birthday. This was on the birthday. And by the way, please be very careful in the custom that we've given over to Anash to make sure to get an aliyah for your birthday. And if your birthday is the day of Kriyas HaTorah, it's not enough to get the Shabbos before. That day you should get it. And what do I see? This was the letter that Sefer Menhagim translated incorrectly from, the English Sefer Menhagim. People are human, I'm just saying. I'm not blaming anyone, they do great work, but mistakes do happen. So this is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What do you do now? And I was stuck in a shul that when I went to the Gab, I asked him, do you mind giving me the keys for the Sefer Torah, for the Aron, to do Kriyas HaTorah? He's like eyes wide open. He never heard of such a thing before. It's an Alta, this is in Batei Rand. It's like it's in Nachlaot, but it's like a Mea Sha'arim little housing complex where, this is an 80-year-old Gabbai. He never heard of Kriyas HaTorah past 10 o'clock in the morning in his life. He never heard of such a thing. This is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This isn't what I'm talking about. He said, no, we never in our 70 years have ever done such a thing. We will not give out. I'm like, you don't understand this. I got a letter from Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he's like, I want to see the letter. So I showed him. He was shocked. He gave me the keys and we made a minion. So this is an example of the case. Okay, next subject. Within the subject, We're moving on now to page 209. Okay, 209 in the book. Okay, how soon should the morning blessings be said? This is also from page 212. It's 212 and 209. And the answer to that is that we did touch upon this in the past, that we did discuss already the question, until when can you say it? We said a number of opinions. Some say until the 4th hour of the day. Some say until midday. Some say until sunset. And the Gra, the Vilna Gaon, held you can even say till you go to sleep. So if you go to sleep 11:30 at night, you remember, oh my gosh, I forgot to say, I forgot to say Nesan Zechavina, you can say it then, going on the morning. Bottom line is that those who follow the Mishnah Berurah only do until midday. So past midday, they will not say brachas anymore. But based on the wording of the Alter Rebbe, Shulchan Aruch Harav, we would say it until sunset. So you have until sun. So that we already discussed. That's the end time. The preferred start time, however, is always the earlier the better, as soon as you can. It should be the first thing we do in our day, especially for women who are not davening Shachris. Women who are not davening Shachris based on that they're busy with their children, etc. So even though they have an exemption for that, as we will discuss in the laws of prayer, nonetheless, it causes that their morning blessings is actually their biblical prayer, their fulfillment of the biblical command of praying to Hashem. And therefore, we all know that before a person fulfills a biblical prayer, they are not to do certain things. So therefore, it's very important, even though they're not davening Shachris and not going through the whole tefillah and going through all those halachas, they would have to make sure to do that as soon as possible, aside from the fact that the morning blessings weren't instituted to be said right away for the pleasures received right away. Likewise, based on Kabbalah, the Rashash, Rabbi Shalom Sharabi, writes that one who delays Birchas HaShachar allows the Klippos to continue nurturing from the upper world. So Shalom Sharabi was, everyone here heard of the Rashash, right? Okay. Anyone not hear of the Rashash? The Rashash, he lived in Eretz Yisrael in the 1700s. He was the head of the yeshiva called Beis Kel, which was the Kabbalist yeshiva in Jerusalem. At that time, the Chidah was a student of the Rashash. The Rashash became known as like the father of Kabbalah post-Arizal time. So the Sephardim, just like they all accepted, and all Jewry accepted the rulings of the Arizal, the Sephardim in particular all accepted as well, in addition, the rulings of the Rashash. So when there are two ways of interpreting the writings of the Arizal, they will follow always the ruling and approach of the Rashash, Reb Shalom Sharabi. A lot of you have Siddur Rashash, Sidur HaRashash, maybe you've seen. It's a Siddur with Kabbalistic Kavanis that are written inside of it. A lot of Sephardi Siddurim have the Kavanis of the Rashash written in them. There's the Yeshiva of Reb Shalom Sharabi in Yerushalayim, and I believe it's in Makor Baruch neighborhood, the Yeshiva Samikubalim. In any event, so the Rashash, the tradition is that he was a Gilgal of Reb Chaim Vital, or of the Arizal, I don't remember right now, one of the two. That he was a Gilgal of one of the two and was completing the work that he didn't do. He has actually an interesting history. By the way, his yard site is Yud Shvat, same as the Rebbe Rayatz. He passed away in Yud Shvat. He was originally from Yemen. He was a Yemenite Jew. And he was a simple worker. He didn't want to make money off his Torah. And so therefore he didn't allow anyone to know who he was. And he would work also like as a cobbler or as a tailor, whatever he can do. And he wasn't very good at it, but nonetheless, that's what they say. He wasn't very good at it, but nonetheless he did it. He ended up doing some work for a woman, in a almana, a widow in her home in Yemen, and the woman tried to seduce him like Yosef HaTzadik and Potiphar's wife, and when that happened, he ran away through the window, and he ran and ran till he never came back to Yemen. He ran away to Bombay. He lived in Bombay, and there he went to the closest Beis Medrash. There was a Sephardi community living in Bombay in the 1700s. They had come from Iraq. Iraqi Jewry, some of them immigrated to India. So they were already living in Bombay. And he comes to the shul, and the shul is, it was a shul hotel, an interesting mixture. You had to pay to get in, like a hotel. You had to pay to stay there and get a meal. And he never heard of such a thing before. In Yemen, there's achnasas archim, it's free. Today they have hotels called achnasas archim, and you pay like a 5-star hotel. It's called achnasas archim. I think it's called achnasas kesef. That should be a better name. But it's called tav, achnasas archim. It's like, what's your chesed? Oh, well, I give people food. Really? Yeah, I run a big department store, very expensive prices, but I do give people food when they pay for it. Anyway, so he's standing in front of the shul, the hotel shul, and he asks the guard, do you mind if I go? And he says, you have to pay. He was dirt poor. He had nothing. So he's waiting outside in the hot Indian sun. When the owner of the shul was in the middle of his rich man's afternoon nap, and his father, who was passed away a number of years, comes to him in a dream and says, a holy tzaddik is waiting in front of the hotel and shul. Go now and open up for him. And he woke up from the dream. He saw his father. He said, Dad, I'll take care of it soon. He went back to sleep. And again, his father came back. And he kept nudging him until he had to listen. He came, and there he saw the Rashash. And he said, you're the tzaddik. And as soon as the Rashash heard that someone knew who he was, he no longer desired to stay in the hotel. He left again, and this time he traveled to Eretz Yisrael. He came to Yerushalayim and got a job working as the cleaner of the Yeshivas HaMikubalim of Beis Kel Yeshiva. He was the simple cleaner. He was the janitor, cleaning up, mopping, etc. But he would always make sure to eavesdrop on the shiurim being given in the shul. And when he would overhear a certain difficulty or question that the yeshiva or Rosh Yeshiva would have, when everyone was gone, he would write down the answer in the book and continue his job. And the Rosh Yeshiva would see in the morning an answers from heaven of someone who has a great expertise in Kabbalah. And he got the sense that this isn't Eliyahu Navi, but some secret individual is coming and being involved. So he sent his daughter to spy out from the Ezras Nashim, which he did a great job in doing. And lo and behold, he was caught red-handed, writing in the book. So she told her father, I caught it was Shalom the janitor. Shalom, he's the one writing all this. The next day, when he came to the shir, he told the janitor, Shalom, you are now the Rosh Yeshiva, I am your student, and that's how he became the Rosh Yeshiva of Beis Kel, Jerusalem, Kabbalist Yeshiva. He was also given that daughter as a wife. He ended up marrying that daughter. That was his wife, yes. So he writes the following. The Rashash writes, it is of extreme importance to say Birchas HaShachar as soon as possible in the morning. Why? Because when the person wakes up, he wakes up with certain klippos, and those klippos continue to nurture off of him until Birchas HaShachar is recited. This also finds corresponding literature in the works of the Rebbe Rashab, in which he writes that the saying of the morning blessings draws down an encompassing light to banish the klippos, very similar to what we're reading here from the Rashash said 100, 200 years earlier, and therefore the earlier the better it should be said. What does a person do in the case of a mix-up? So we already briefly discussed one of these scenarios. We're going to discuss some more scenarios. In general, the order written in the siddur is not set in stone. Yes, initially you should follow it, but it's not set in stone in terms of the fact that this is the way it was ordained to be said in the times of the Talmud. Wrong. In Talmudic times, we agree it was ordained to be said in the method that you received your pleasures in the order you received your pleasures in. There was no set order. Furthermore, the order written in the siddur does not even follow the order written in the Shulchan Aruch. That's a different order. The Alter Rebbe set it up in this order based on different reasons, and of course we should abide by it, but it doesn't invalidate the blessings if they're said in a different order. What we did mention is that was the exception to two brachas. Who remembers which ones? There's two brachas that saying in the wrong order can make problems. And that is Zoykif Kafufim Amatri Asurim as Bechlam Asayimone. If a person proceeded to recite the blessing of Zoykif Kafufim, before Matir Asurim,
Oh, right, yeah.
and you may no longer recite Matir Asurim, so rules the Alter Rebbe, the Mishnah Brura, and many other Paiskim. Not unanimous, some argue, but that is the final ruling. Amongst all Sfardim, Ashkenazim, we all follow the same ruling, that you can no longer say the blessing of Matir Asurim if you already said Zeikav Kufim, because Matir Asurim is the step of sitting up in bed, and Zeikav Kufim is the step of standing out of the bed. Once you stood, it means you already sat. So once I bless God for Zeikav Kufim, included in that is also Matir Asurim. Similar to a cup of coffee. If I put sugar in my coffee and have milk, and I say shahakol, then I covered everything. While if I first said shahakol on the sugar and only then I brought my coffee and had in mind to drink coffee, then I would have to say a new bracha on the coffee, right? Similar idea. Once you already say what is together, it covers it all. However, all the other ones, it makes no difference the order. One doesn't invalidate the other, including shleis hanigaya vid isha. If a person said it in the wrong order, it is not a problem. Again, isha, of course, for men. Okay, so that was old information. Now we're moving on to new stuff. Sometimes it happens that we started saying the wrong bracha and we want to correct ourselves and say the right one. Like, for example, I started saying Matir Asurim. Oh, I'm not up to that yet. No, I'm already said that. I'll say Zeikav Kufuf. Or I say Zeikav Kufuf, I want to correct myself, say Matir Asurim. Or any of the other blessings, whenever you say a bracha and you correct yourself, is that correct to correct yourself? What happens with the correction? Is it a valid blessing when you correct yourself? So there's a lot of, this is on page 210, there's a lot of confusion here in the Paiskim. There's a lot of debate of what the status is when a person does such a thing. In other words, that let's say, for example, instead of saying Hanais L'Sechavina, I started off Malbis Sharumim, and then I caught myself and said, oh, Hanais L'Sechavina, Ben Yom Vein Laila. So which blessing did I now say? Did I say, did I validly say Hanais L'Sechavina, which was the corrected version, or did I validly say only the blessing of Malbis Sharumim, or did I say both? Answer, debate. It's a debate what this is. And therefore the best thing is just don't correct yourself. Correcting yourself in these brachas will only enter you into trouble. If you have a piece of, I don't know, you have a piece of meat, and by said you said bari pre'agaf, and then yes, correct yourself, say shakol niyah b'dvar. I agree with you. You should do that. But in the case of morning blessings, where you have to say all these blessings regardless, correcting oneself would be politically incorrect because it enters him into a lot of machlekes of what to do. So the best thing is take whatever bracha you said, and continue the rest of the brachas, skipping that one that you already were yaitzing. Can a person fulfill his obligation, on page 211, can a person fulfill his obligation through hearing the morning blessings from somebody else, saying them? For whatever reason, you want to be yaitzah with somebody, you're in doubt whether you said a certain blessing, you don't remember, can you hear from somebody else? So in general, the rule is, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh. It says that on Har Sinai, the Torah was given to every man for himself. So you fulfill the Torah and mitzvahs, good. You don't fulfill them, it's not anyone else's problem but yours. That was the Matan Torah approach. Then came along the pact that was made by Har Grizim and Har Evel. And the pact that we made there was of Arevus, that now we all become guarantors of each other. So when a person doesn't do a mitzvah, it's not just his individual problem, it's my problem. Very similar to a government system, where if one person is poor, it would be silly for me to think that it makes no difference to me, as he will nurture from government funds that I am paying for with my taxes. So everyone holds responsibility for another. Everyone helps the other. And this is the idea of and that's the whole idea of a chiach techiach, of doing mivtzayim and shlichus and helping other Jews. It's not just a matter of kindness and tzedakah, but it's an obligation. It's an obligation that a Jew has mutual responsibility for his Jewish brethren to do Torah and mitzvahs. Because of that arevus, of that guarantor status that we all have, The halacha is we can help others fulfill their mitzvahs. So while you cannot hire someone to daven on your behalf, that's correct, you cannot do so, but someone can say a bracha for you. Let's say you want to bench, but you don't know how to. Someone else who ate bread can bench for you, and you'll listen and you'll pay attention. It'll be Yaitzeh. It used to be that the chazan in shuls, when they said chazaras hashatz, half the shul or 3/4 of the shul didn't know how to daven. They were Yaitzeh with the chazan. That all comes from the idea of Kol Yisrael Zilazeh. Since each other, we're guarantors of each other, we can help others fulfill their mitzvahs. However, when it comes to the morning blessings, the halacha is the Alter Rebbe rules. You cannot fulfill it through hearing another person say them, and it only is fulfilled if you have a minyan. So having another person say the blessings for you and be yaitz with them doesn't work. And the reason for that is because the Alter Rebbe says that blessings of praise to Hashem, which is the idea behind the Birchas HaShachar, it needs, if you want to be yaitz from someone, if you want to fulfill your obligation through another person, it has to be done through a community, through a minyan, and if that's not fulfilled, it doesn't help to be yaitz.
If my husband forgot this Shabbos to say Birkat Gomel, but I davened in a different shul than him, and I actually remembered.
A gomel for what?
Because we flew from America.
Right.
But the reason I said it really is because in between I went to Florida by myself, and I never said it, and my husband said he can't say it for me because he didn't go with me to Florida.
Where did he travel to?
We went to New York, New Jersey together. Right?
Okay,
and
so
then
you
in
say
the middle of
Agomel.
the trip, no, he said
Yeah.
it for both of us.
Oh, okay.
Then in the middle of the trip, I went to Florida. I got.
What do you
back
mean
and
for
I-
both of us? There's no such thing as for both of us. A person who has to say Agomel, unless you're there in shul and hear him say it, you're not yaitzu with him.
Oh, really?
Of course.
Well, I said it.
That's what I said before. I can't hire. Just imagine, it would be great if we can hire a davening service. We'll have a new source of income. We'll hire a whole bunch of younger light to daven on behalf of all the businessmen that don't have to show up anymore for davening. And you can hire people to daven for them.
So
You
what
can't
was-
hire people to daven for you. What you can do is you can keep your mouth closed and hear someone else say the blessings and have in mind to be yaitza with them
No.
if halachas allow it. Women in general don't say hagaymo, okay?
Oh, really?
So, correct. That is the widespread custom.
Okay.
The reason for that is because the opportunity of saying it in front of a quorum of 10 men is not always there. Many shuls don't, it's not etiquette for a woman to scream Hagayimel from the women's section. In Chabad, it's for sure not done. When Rabbi Groner once asked the Rebbe, what should my wife do after birth about saying Hagayimel, the Rebbe looked at him and said, since when did you ever hear of women saying Hagayimel? That's what the Rebbe told him. And then he told the Rebbe, but look, the Alter Rebbe writes in the Seder B'Chasaneni, you should say Hagayimel. So the Rebbe told him, go ask the Zikne Rabbani Anash. And he went and he asked of Shmuel Greinam, and Shmuel Greinam told him, I've never heard of it being done. However, then he went and asked a different Rav, and he said it is done. So, so it's machlekes. Yeah, both Chabad.
Oh, wow.
So, but nonetheless, I'm telling you in practice,
But
in
now with
actuality,
respect, I give-
most women do not. Has anyone here ever said Hagayimel?
No.
Yeah. Most women do not say Hagayimel.
Sephardic women do. I'm sure.
Yeah, a lot of Sephardic women do, but most women don't say Hagayimel. Again, the halachic basis for that is that Hagayimel is more of a voluntary blessing than an obligatory blessing. And in place of that, we learned in our share for the men, the Alter Rebbe writes in the Shulchan Aruch, that you can read the Karban Toda, and that Karban Toda is in place of the Toda offering that you would give for giving birth or give for, flying across the ocean. So that you can do anytime you want.
Flying from New York to Florida, you don't need to bench them. It's only cross.
Right, so flying New York to Florida, min hadin would require a Hagayimel to be said, but practically the custom is not to do so. But min hadin, you do fly over an ocean. It's off the east. You fly over the Atlantic, sure. Planes don't fly straight, they make a curve. Their flight pattern is over the ocean, and we should never think, oh, we're so close to land, it's safe. It is not safe to land in the middle of that ocean. I mean, just look at a lot of plane crashes, and with no survivors have occurred in the Hudson, have occurred right off the coast of a recent one, right? The plane that crashed in Queens. There was one right off the Bay of New York. So once you're over the ocean, it is dangerous. It's dangerous.
I made it.
Baruch Hashem, yeah. But nonetheless, in these things with flying, there's a whole discussion if you should say at all agama by flying, because today flying is so safe. It's safer than driving a car.
Right, I heard it.
Safer than walking the street.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because of that, some people don't say agama by flying. But the world's per custom to say it, but we limit how and when we say it, in which circumstances. So from New York to Florida, it is not customary to be said, even though technically we are flying through a strip of water, which is dangerous if anything would happen.
Thank you.
But obviously, if something happened on the plane and it began, losing altitude or falling, then, people would say, okay, well, sure, if it was something serious. Okay, we are almost done. We're going to save the last part for next week in Meretz Hashem. I wish everyone have a great week. A Shavua Tov.
In Rav Arusha's shul in Yerushalayim, there was for